Without further ado, I think we can go ahead and get started. So we have the privilege today. Our topic is the blessing of COVID-19 to early childhood education. And so we have the privilege of having Katrina Korb from the University of Jos with us this afternoon. And she is the unit coordinator for the Early Childhood Education Department in the Faculty of Education at the University of Jos. So we are very excited and we're very pleased to have her here with us this afternoon. So Katrina, you are very, very welcome to our ACSI Nigeria webinar series. It's a privilege to have you with us this afternoon. We're really excited to know what we'll learn and gain from this webinar. So I will go ahead and pray and then we can go ahead and get started. Our dear Heavenly Father, we recognize that our little children are a gift from you. We recognize that our babies, our crèche children, our nursery children, God, they are gifts that you have given us, and we need to steward those gifts well. We thank you for Katrina. We thank you for the work that she's doing in the Early Childhood Education Department and the University of Jos. We thank you that she's been able to sacrifice some of her time to join us this afternoon. And we pray that you would speak through her this afternoon. I pray that you would give her the words that she needs. I pray that you'd give her the insight she needs to share all the things, the wisdom that she has and the knowledge that she has on how COVID has actually been a blessing to early childhood education. Pray that you would be with us as we listen to her speak. I pray that you would open our hearts to new ways of doing Christian education in early childhood this afternoon. I pray that you would give us new ideas and help us to be able to implement those ideas in our various schools going forward. Pray that you would Right, so Katrina, sorry, network cut out again. So let's pray also that network will be awesome for the next hour and a half. I forgot to pray about that also. So Katrina, you are welcome. It is good to have you again with us this afternoon, and I'll let you go ahead and get started. Katrina, you are muted.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Is that right?
Great. Yep, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, so I'd like to appreciate ACSI for the invitation, how COVID is impacting early childhood education, and think about how we can use this time to improve early childhood education. So I'd like to start with James 1, verses 2 to 4. And it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." So I think we'd all agree we're facing so many trials right now, but those trials can make us mature and complete. So the lesson is that one of the purposes of challenges is to make us mature and complete, and we can apply that to early childhood education. Maybe we can use this time of challenges in education to make early childhood education mature and complete in Nigeria. So as an application, what lessons can the challenge of COVID teach us to make early childhood education mature and complete? Trials give us an opportunity to think about what are our weaknesses, what are our strengths, and we can think about how can we make our weaknesses, how can we strengthen those so we can improve early childhood education. So I have 4 lessons that I think we can learn during this time of COVID. So we'll start with the first one. The first lesson is parent grieved me in education in Nigeria is that it seems like there's this perpetual conflict between parents and teachers. Parents and teachers seem to always be fighting against each other. And that grieves me for 2 reasons. The first reason is that harmonious parent-teacher relationships are vital for children's development. Research shows that when teachers and parents have good relationships, then children have higher academic achievement. And we also know that when parents and teachers are in conflict with each other, we're teaching children poor social skills, because children are always watching us and they're hearing things that we don't even realize they're hearing. And when they hear and sense that fight between parents and teachers, we're also teaching them bad social skills. But when there's good relationships between parents and teachers, then children are learning positive social skills through the process. And the other reason that the conflict between parents and teachers have grieved me is that both parents and teachers love the child. Parents obviously love their children, and we know that teachers love the children in their classes. Sometimes parents don't quite understand the best way to raise children, but that shouldn't be a point for conflict. That should be a point for education and for ministry to teach parents how they can help support their children's development. But a blessing of COVID-19 is that parents now have fresh appreciation for teachers. They know how much time you put into it, how much energy, how much effort it takes to train children, and even how much skill that it takes. So my challenge to you at this time is to work with the people in your school. Think about how can we use this time of appreciation for education to strategically build positive relationships with the parents. You know, this will look different depending upon different schools and different contexts. So I think it's something you should prayerfully think through with the staff in your school. What are some things we can do to build strong relationships with the parents? A few things that I might suggest you consider. One is sending out newsletters saying, this is what we're doing in our school, here's why we're doing it, and here's what you can do to support learning in the home with your children. You can thank parents for their efforts. Make an effort to say thank you for the care and love that you're giving into the children. Thank you for supporting their education. And that will have an odd side effect. Once you thank them for something small, then they'll want to keep doing more because they see the appreciation that you have for them. Another strategy is to contact parents with good news when their children do something well. Send them a WhatsApp message or give them a call. My father taught JS1 mathematics for decades. And at the beginning of the year, he'd put somewhere between 100 and 150 different students. And every week he'd think about, okay, which students in my class have done something good this week? And he'd call the parents and say, you know, your child did this well at school today. Well done. Keep up the hard work. And then he'd cancel the name of the student on his list. So by the end of the year, he wanted to have contacted every single parent with something they could do to improve. You could also try sending out parent surveys, particularly at the beginning of the year. Ask parents, what are your child's interests? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are some things you want to work with your child through this academic year? Because parents know their children better than we do as teachers when we enter the classroom. So by asking the parents what they think, you're getting their tie-in as well. So the first lesson we have, the first blessing of COVID, is that fresh appreciation that parents have for teachers. So let's use that to build strong relationships between the parents and the teachers so that the children will have better academic success and develop better social skills. The second lesson that I think we can learn from COVID is this time of COVID has forced us to do curriculum in new ways. We have online learning, we have home learning, and it's forced us into positive, creative ways to teach the curriculum. The last webinar that was held, I believe Mrs. Bangwell talked about the workbook she's doing by telling stories and teaching content. That is a wonderful way of teaching curriculum. And if I were a teacher, I'd wonder, how can I access those workbooks? But the problem is most of those resources are localized to one school. You know, one school's doing excellent things, but how can the other school have access to it? So how can we come together as educators throughout Nigeria and share those resources that we have, the videos we're creating, the worksheets we're creating, the different home activities that we're giving pupils? So I'd like to offer you a challenge. Someone who's good at technology and someone with an entrepreneurial spirit should create some type of online system that helps us to share those resources. Like Sarah said at the beginning, ACSI's mission is stronger together. Teachers don't have to recreate the wheels. We should be able to learn from each other and use the resources that each other are developing. I know there's a website called teacherspayteachers.com, and that's a website where teachers can post the activities that they develop, and then other teachers can browse those activities and pay. It's a small token. I think it's typically only like $2 to $5 to be able to access those resources. That would be useful now and also useful in the long term to talk about what are some activities that we're using within the classroom. So each teacher doesn't have to recreate the activities that they're doing. Let's work together and share the resources that are beneficial in a way that we're learning how to do now that everything is online to protect us from the pandemic. A third lesson I think we can learn from the COVID pandemic is to reconsider the place of exams in our education. One of the things that is confusing to me is when we're talking about resumption of schools, basically the only thing we're talking about is students writing exams. You know, you hear things in the media from school officials, schools must resume so students can write exams. Now, are exams actually the goal of education? One of my quarrels with education in Nigeria is when, you know, students ask the question, why should we learn this? The answer is always, you should learn it because it will be on the exam. In primary school, why should you learn something? Because it's going to be on the common entrance exam. In junior secondary school, why should you learn something? Because it's going to be on the junior WIAC or NECO. In secondary school, why should you learn something? Because it's going to be on the WIAC or NECO. In university, I hear colleagues saying, pay attention, oh, you need to learn this. It's going to be on the exam. Even at the PhD level, I've heard people say, you need to do this because your external examiner will query you if you don't do this. So all of education revolves around exams. But is the point of education, is the point of learning to pass exams? Should passing exams be a justification to learn something? At UniJOS, some of the most frustrating weeks for me are the weeks where we write examinations. Because when I go in to invigilate those exams, my goodness, I just get so discouraged at the level of cheating and malpractice in those exams. And I just think, I'm teaching the next generation of teachers. And so if teachers are cheating like this on their own exams, what's going to happen when they enter the classroom? And there was one time I was invigilating an exam and my mind was wandering. And I thought, you know, if I were teaching a class about baking a cake, what should be my assessment at the end of the class? My assessment would be having the students bake a cake. And would the students cheat on baking the cake? No, they would bake the cake and they would bring the cake into the classroom and they would be so proud. They'd say, look at this cake. Look what I created. Look at what I've done. They would take pride in the product of their learning. But if I would give them an exam about baking a cake, would they cheat on that exam? And the answer is perhaps yes, they might. Because what relevance does an exam have for baking a cake? How relevant is that exam? I think one of the, what have we gotten wrong in our education that there's such widespread cheating on the exams? There are many reasons. It's a very complex issue, but I think one of the things we've gotten wrong is that the point of education is not to pass an exam. What is the point of education? Education is to help pupils identify their gifts and abilities that God has blessed them with. Identify them and help them build those up. The point of education is to help pupils develop the skills that they need to succeed in society so that they can add value to their families and their communities. So when pupils ask in nursery school, why do I need to learn how to count? The answer should not be because you need to pass an exam. The answer should be you need to count because let's say you're plucking mangoes. You'll know how many mangoes you plucked. So then if you take it to market, you can sell and get a fair amount for your mangoes. There are other ways to assess what pupils have learned besides an exam. Growing up in the American system of education, I never had to take an exam that would determine whether I passed and was promoted to the next level. It was only until I was doing my PhD that I would have oral exams that determined whether I would be student learning. For example, in the last webinar, Mrs. Bangwell talked about teaching area by having students calculate how much carpet they would need if they wanted to recarpet their parlor. If a child can do that task, is it really important that they also pass an exam? In English, if pupils can write a story or write a letter, do they also need to pass an exam? What type of assessment is meaningful to the pupil that they can show pride in and say, look at how much I've learned from this. And even let's take it down to the level of early childhood education. Why do many schools force children to write an exam when pupils cannot even write? So what happens at the end of the day? Pupils can't answer the question by themselves, so teachers give the answer to children. The point of an exam is not for children to give a right answer. The point of an exam is to help identify what do children know and what do they not know so that letters can a child identify. And on the exam, I found out that they cannot identify the letters M, N, and U. So now as a teacher, I know with this child, I need to work on teaching the letters of M, N, and U. And actually what we're doing in early childhood education by giving children exams when they can't pass the exams themselves is that we're teaching bad character. We're teaching children to be able to expect the answers to questions from someone else. And that is the heart of examination malpractice. We're teaching them to cheat, to get answers from others. So the blessing of COVID-19 is that we can start reconsidering the place of exams in education, particularly in early childhood education. So my challenge is to let's get together and thoughtfully discuss the role of exams with the families in our school and on social media. And one of the best teaching strategies to get people to think really well is asking questions. So here are some questions I think we should ask. Why are exams so important that they are the standard guiding considerations about opening of schools? I agree we need to be safe. We need to keep children and families safe and teachers safe. But are exams the heart of the discussion about whether we should reopen or not? Does education exist for more important reasons than passing exams? Are exams more important than pupil learning and intelligence? Are exams more important than the long-term impact on the child and their ability to function in education, to function in society? Are there better, more relevant ways of measuring pupil learning than exams? So I really challenge us, let's use this time to think through what is the place of exams. I'm not arguing we should never give exams, but everything has its time and its place. And I think the place of exams in Nigerian education is much too strong, and we need to rework some of our assessment. The fourth lesson, which I think is the most important lesson, and I'm going to spend most of the time talking about this lesson is the revelation that young children learn differently from older children. So a blessing of COVID-19 is that parents daily see that young children struggle with online or home learning whereas older children can manage. You know, most upper elementary and secondary school students, they're managing with the options. But young children are an entirely different story. Some complaints that early childhood educators hear from parents. They'll say things like, my young child can't concentrate on online learning. Keep them engaged. Parents might say, how the children, young children, they cannot self-guide their work. We have to constantly help them refocus their attention on learning. And then there's also the complaint that stating the obvious, these children, they can't read or type, so they can't read the notes like the older children can. So one of the blessings is that parents see for themselves that young children learn differently than older children. This is something that child developmentalists have known for almost a century, but unfortunately it hasn't found its way into Nigerian early childhood education programs. So if young children learn differently from older children, the implication is that young children need different teaching. Different learning means we need different teaching. What is true for online learning is also true for classroom learning. The simple fact that's well illustrated by COVID-19 is that young children need different teaching methods than older children. So, how do young children learn? First of all, young children want to learn. Parents might say that they have to struggle to monitor their children. Their children don't want to learn, but that's not true. Young children want to learn when the learning is relevant to them. One of the things that I really enjoyed during COVID-19 is being able to take walks for my exercise. Instead of doing my exercise condensed in a short period of time, I now have time to go out and go in walks around the quarters and the neighboring areas. One of the most adorable things that I saw, a mom was going to fetch water from the well, and behind her, she had an infant who could just barely walk. But that infant had a teeny tiny little cup of water. And the mom put a little bit of water into that cup, and the infant was toddling behind the mom back to the house. And actually the infant fell and spilled the water, but then got back up and continued to follow the mom home, carrying the container of water. That illustrates that that child wants to learn. That child wants to do what they see their mom do is relevant to them. And this is one of the problems we face. A lot of education is not relevant to young children. It's not relevant to their daily lives. Another complaint that parents are saying right now, they're saying that young children cannot concentrate on learning. But the fact is that young children can concentrate. Again, on one of my walks, there was one morning I saw 4 young children. They were seriously concentrating outside. You know, sometimes the dirt washes off from the yard and washes onto the road and then gets packed very tightly on the road. There were 4 young children and they all had sticks, and they'd drawn a rectangle that was pretty wide. It was about 1 meter by 1.5 meter long. And each of these children were using sticks to dig up the dirt within that rectangle to expose the road below. And they had to have been concentrating for at least 30 minutes on this, digging in the dirt, trying to clear out that rectangle that they had demarcated. There were children 3 years old, there were children 6 years old. And I kept walking past, and then when I walked by 30 minutes later, they were still intensely concentrating on this activity. But some would argue and say, oh yeah, these children, they weren't doing anything. They were just playing in the dirt. But let's think about, what were they learning when they were playing in that dirt, when they were concentrating on digging the dirt? Just by themselves, they were learning oral language skills. Those children were talking back and forth to each other. There was a steady stream of conversation. They're learning oral language skills. They were learning cooperation and social skills. They were working together to achieve a common goal. They were developing fine motor skills. As they were digging, they were using their hands and fingers. Those skills will help them learn how to write when they need to learn how to write. And actually, if you look at the research, these skills, social skills and language skills, those skills are more important and will benefit them more in the long term than many of the facts that they're forced to memorize in some early childhood education programs. And those were things that the children learned just by themselves. So I think there's an important question. What could those children learn if a wise teacher was guiding and enriching their play? Young children could learn shapes. A teacher could go and say, what shape is it that you drew in the dirt? What other shapes could you draw in the dirt? They could teach reading and writing. Ask, what letters can you form in the dirt? They could teach measurement and counting. Get out different size takeaway containers and even tomato paste cans. Ask them to fill those cans with the dirt. And you can ask them, which container has more dirt? How do you know? How many tomato paste cans of dirt does it take to fill up this takeaway container full of dirt? In science, a teacher could ask, what do you observe about the soil? How does the soil look? How does the soil feel? How does the soil smell? Are you finding anything in the dirt besides the soil? Are you finding any plant parts or insect parts? So there's a lot, with a wise teacher who's enriching that play, there's a lot of even academic skills that young children can learn just by playing in the dirt. Most of the things we try to teach children, they can't concentrate on them because they're too abstract, but they can concentrate, and they can concentrate very well when the learning is integrated with their play. When the learning is interesting, when the learning is playful, and when the learning is delightful to them. So another fact is that young children were created to learn. There are amazing ways that God created young children to help them learn more effectively, and even learn more effectively than some of us learn. They want to learn even from birth. When given a supportive learning environment that complements how they learn, young children learn more than we can even imagine. But when the learning environment is designed for older children, or even for adults, then we can damage that internal drive to learn. Young children have a spark for learning, but we have to add fuel to catch that spark. We can think about the analogy, there are different fuels that we use for different methods of cooking. We have firewood for cooking. We have kerosene that we can use for cooking. We have gas and even some NEPA electric stoves. But if I add firewood to an electric stove, will that electric stove spark to light to help you cook your soup? Or if you add Karo to a gas stove, will that spark actually light? You might even cause damage and start a fire if you try to put kerosene in a gas stove. In early childhood education, we have to have the right fuel to catch the spark. And using the wrong fuel can lead to harm. The result of teaching young children using methods designed for older children is that young children come to hate school and hate learning, and they learn in ways that aren't beneficial for their future. So forcing younger children to learn like older children is like forcing strawberries to grow in Lagos. Strawberries grow fantastically in Jos with the weather and the conditions in Jos. But in Lagos, the strawberries won't thrive and the harvest will be poor. The same thing is true about pineapples. The last time I was in Lagos, I had a pineapple and I just said, wow, this pineapple is the nectar of heaven. But we can't get pineapples like that in Jos. Pineapples are not sweet in Jos, but they're sweet in Lagos. So an important farming principle is that crops that are grown in the wrong conditions do not thrive. And the same thing is true for children. Children educated in the wrong conditions do not thrive. Children will not learn well when the learning environment is incompatible with how they learn. To be perfectly honest, a lot of what's taught in early childhood education, I find boring. I remember one time I was supervising teaching practice students in nursery classroom. And I was getting so bored in the class, and I was ready to get up and run outside on the playground and play. But I looked around at the 4-year-olds and I said, if 4-year-olds can sit still and listen to this teacher, then I surely need to be able to sit still and listen to the teacher. But that's not how learning should be. Learning should be filled with joy. Joy both for the children and for the teacher. But what has happened in Nigerian education? To prepare children for primary 1, we teach them the primary 1 content in nursery 3. To prepare children for nursery 3, we take the nursery 3 content and teach it in nursery 2. And to prepare them for nursery 2, we take the nursery 2 content and take it down to nursery 1. The end result, we're teaching primary 1 content to 3-year-old children using the exact same methods. But there's a proverb that says, hurry and haste can only bear children with many regrets along the way. A couple Christmas Eves ago, I got a knock on the door. And when I went to answer the door, there was a little boy with a bag. And he said that Ella sent the bag for me for Christmas as a little happy Christmas. And I was like, okay, I'm not quite sure who Ella is, but thank you very much. Excuse me. So I took the bag and sent the kids away. Sorry. So I got this bag of white stuff and I opened it up and it looked like it was flour. And I thought, maybe Ella is my next door neighbor who I taught how to bake for the past year. She'd come over and we'd bake different things. So, okay, it'd be appropriate for her to give me flour. I didn't know her by Ella, but I knew that was one of her names. Emanuela was one of her names. So I got this flour and I was planning on making dinner rolls for our Christmas Eve dinner. And so I started mixing the dinner rolls with the flour that my neighbor gave me for Christmas. And everything went well until I started kneading the dinner rolls. And when I was kneading the bread, I was like, I don't think that was flour. The dough was a little closer to Play-Doh than it was to flour. But I told my family, I said, no, I've made these dinner rolls, I've worked hard, and we are going to eat the dinner rolls, no matter what they taste like. But then when we actually started eating the dinner rolls, I was the first one to say, this is disgusting. I'm not taking the rest of this dinner roll. So we realized that this flour was not flour. And I asked my neighbor if she'd sent me over some Happy Christmas, and she said no. So to this day, I have no idea who Ella is. But then we asked different people who came to the house. We said, what do you think this substance is? And finally, we came to the conclusion that it probably was white maize that was ground up for tuwo. So I had my cook make tuwo out of this substance. And when we had it as the same substance, when I tried making it into bread, into dinner rolls, it tasted terrible. But the same substance, when we used it to make tuwo, it tasted fantastic. So what is the lesson? The lesson is that when the cooking method matched the ingredient, the food tasted fantastic. But when the cooking method did not match the ingredient, it tasted terrible. When education matches the needs of the child, they will thrive. They're brilliant learners. They're created to learn. One of my favorite child development facts is that between the ages of 3 and 5, Young children learn 5 to 7 new words every single day. When I'm talking to a young child, I often wonder, what words am I saying right now that you didn't know before? Because God created them so amazingly to learn. But when education method is not in tune with the needs of the child, then learning is like pulling teeth. And that's what we're facing right now in the COVID pandemic. The teaching methods that are working reasonably well for older children are not working for younger children. And the result is that the parents and teachers are frustrated and the children are frustrated too. So the blessing of COVID-19, I think now is the time to fix the mismatch between teaching methods in early childhood education and how young children learn. There's a serious problem in many schools, in nursery classrooms, and now is the perfect time to fix it. One good analogy is that early childhood education is the foundation of building a house. The early years are important. What would happen if we built a house without a foundation? The building would collapse. So early, good, positive experiences in the early years is vitally important for future success, just like the foundation of the building. However, the foundation of the house is different from the rest of the house. Likewise, early childhood education is different than education at higher levels. What materials do we use to build a foundation? Are the materials the same? No, the materials in the foundation are different. We don't have doors, we don't have windows, we don't have roofs, but the materials in the foundation of the house are stones and cement and the iron rods. So in the same way, learning activities are different in the early years. The direct instruction that might work for older children should be different from younger children because younger children learn differently. And even if you look at the picture of the foundation here, can you see where the bathrooms are? Can you see where the kitchen is? Can you see where the bedrooms are? You can't see the different parts of the house in the foundation, but the foundation is still important. And the analogy is that what children learn in the early years are different. The goal of early childhood education should be the development of skills in all domains: social skills, physical skills, character, spiritual development. Academic skills aren't quite as important in the early years as holistic development. So the blessing of COVID is that parents are now daily faced with the reality that what works for teaching older children does not work for teaching younger children. So I think now is the time for change, and now is the time to change our structures for teaching young children. And this applies both to what young children learn and how they learn. So I briefly want to go through what should young children learn. Bredekamp and Koppel are pretty prominent early childhood educators, and they say that narrow focusing on academic skills is problematic during the years from 3 to 6, not only because it's potentially damaging to children's social and emotional development, but also because it's intellectually limiting. When we focus on academic skills, we're actually harming the cognitive development of young children because young children need to learn more than just facts. So you'll see the picture on the right of the screen, all these different domains of development: cognitive development, physical development, social development, and character development, which also includes emotional development of regulating feelings, and spiritual development. All of them work together and impact each other. There's a proverb that says, "A single bracelet does not jingle." And we can apply that to early childhood education. A bracelet of only academic skills does not jingle. But if we put on a bracelet of physical development, a bracelet of social development, a bracelet of character and spiritual development, then they will jingle. And so I have a few quotes about the importance of holistic development in the early years. Chadwick Smith wrote one of my favorite books on child development. And he said that children need to jump, run, swing, throw, and balance. Why? So they can be good athletes? No, to become intellectually competent. An important thing to keep in mind is that physical movement is linked to brain development. The more a child moves, the stronger the brain develops. And we know how important brain development is in cognitive development. Another quote that looks at social development. There's a growing body of scientifically based research supporting the strong impacts that enhanced social and emotional behaviors can have on success in school and ultimately life. And now a quote about character development. What matters most in a child's development, they say, is not how much information we can stuff into her brain in the first few years. What matters instead is whether we are able to help her develop a very different set of qualities, a list that includes perseverance, self-control, curiosity, conscientiousness, and character. So the point is, the facts we try to teach young children are not as important as the social, character, and physical development that they're also developing in the early years. And even when we look at cognitive development, which is what we oftentimes think of when we think about school, knowledge is only a small part of cognitive development. We have language abilities, oral language, reading and writing. We have maths, science, social studies, and religious studies. Those are all things we teach in education, but it's a small part of cognitive development. Other parts that are oftentimes more important in the early years are creativity, cognitive self-regulation, the ability to set a goal and work towards accomplishing. Memory is important. Critical thinking skills, curiosity, and problem-solving skills. And you know how I have scientific inquiry popped out and overlapping with problem-solving skills. These are the skills that young children effectively learn and that help them succeed not just in school, but in life as well. So that's what young children should learn. How do young children learn? One way that young children learn is implicitly. What does the word implicitly mean? It means not directly revealed, but through exploring language, concepts, and ideas that are connected to the activities that children are actively engaged in. Sorry, I'm not sure how I just did that on my screen. But implicitly, we can think about the language fact that I talked about. Young children learn 5 to 7 vocabulary words every single day. How do they learn those vocabulary words? Are we giving 3-year-old children the definitions of 5 words every single day, including Saturdays and Sundays and holidays? No, young children learn vocabulary implicitly. They learn it just by hearing these words in conversation. This has important implications for education. If young children learn by exploring, it means we don't have to directly teach them. For me, I have to be directly taught. I've lived in Jos for 13 years, but my Hausa is very, very limited. Once you get beyond readings, my Hausa pretty well finishes. For me, you have to tell me what a word is and what a word means. Aboki means friend. But God created children specially. They can learn it just by conversations. If you say, oh yeah, look at your aboki, Friday, the child knows that Friday is their friend, and so they pick up that word, what aboki means. Another way that children learn is through loving relationships. Gopnik says fundamental relationships of trust are more important than teaching strategies. Relationships of trust are more important than teaching strategies. As an example of this, one time I was volunteering in a Sunday school classroom, and there was a teacher who would get down on the ground and play with the children. And the children loved that teacher. And everywhere that teacher would go, it was like a trail of children following behind her because they loved her so much. They wanted to do whatever she did. They wanted to learn whatever she had to tell them. So when we have loving relationships, children learn more. Another example of how children learn is process, not product. The development of general cognitive skills is more important than the product of a correct answer. As an example of this, again, at a different Sunday school program I was volunteering for, there were 4-year-old children, and they were drawing a picture of a lion from Daniel in the lion's den. And one child was taking their time, and their drawing wasn't perfect, and the mom was a volunteer. And so what did the mom do? The mom took over that art and drew the picture for the child. So the mom wanted the child to have a product of a good lion, but the process was more important than the product. If the child would engage in the process, even if their product was incorrect or imperfect, they would learn fine motor skills that they need for writing. They would learn what a lion looks like, the head, the tail, the mane. They would think about the colors. What colors do I need to use to color the lion? Wrong answers and imperfect products are part of children's development. As another practical example, one of the things that I've been doing during the COVID crisis is farming. Both of my grandparents are farmers, and I love farming myself. I think both child development and farming, you get to see development grow and progress. So I've been trying to get different things to sprout and grow. So a couple of months ago, I was trying to get mango seeds to sprout. And I failed with 9 mango seeds. Or as a friend said, I didn't fail, I just learned 9 different ways not to sprout a mango seed. But I succeeded on the 10th mango seed, and now I know how to sprout a mango seed. Failure and imperfection are part of the learning process, even for adults. So in education, we need to focus on the process. Our children learning the process of how to think, and not focus so much on the product of a memorized correct answer. Young children also need hands-on experiences to learn. And the good proverb that illustrates this, you learn how to cut trees, you learn how to cut down trees by cutting them down. For example, in a lot of early childhood classrooms, children count, and that's all they do is they count and recite the number string. A friend called me about a year ago to interact with their 2-year-old son, who was identifying letters before the age of 2. And they weren't trying to force it on him. He just had older siblings and was picking it up. So he could identify the numbers, no problem. He could recite numbers, no problem. But once I presented him with a book that had birds, it was a counting book with birds, and I asked him to count the birds on the page, he couldn't do it. So he could do the abstract identifying numbers and counting numbers, but he didn't have experience with the hands-on counting with actual objects. And then the last way that young children learn, well, not the last, but the last we'll focus on, is through joyful experiences. There's a proverb or a quote that says, learning and joy go hand in hand. One time I was shooting videos for learning activities. And they were fun, joyful activities. And so one of the kids started laughing as we were shooting the video. And I was using one of the graduates from our early childhood program to film the videos. And once this child started laughing, what did the teacher do? The teacher hit the child upside of the head and said, "Oh yeah, no laughing, be serious, we're learning." And I was shocked, and I felt like I failed as a teacher, because here was a teacher saying there's no place for laughing in learning. But I learn more when I'm happy. And if it's true for me, how much more true will it be for young children? When young children learn and master something, you can see the delight and the joy in their faces. And so our classrooms should be filled with delighted laughter. So now I want to go to meeting young children's learning needs during COVID. And I wonder if there's a way I can clear my screen. Well, anyway. Oops, sorry. Okay, so let's talk about meeting young children's learning needs during COVID. When used uninformedly and unstrategically, technology can be harmful for young children's holistic development. And now I'll give the caveat that I don't think the word uninformedly or unstrategically are actually words, but I wanted to use them because I think they communicate something that's very important. Sometimes we think that technology can be a panacea for learning just by itself. But we need to be informed about how technology can be used, and we need to be strategic in how technology is used. Sometimes technology can help children be passive. You know, children are passively watching a television, or they're passively clicking buttons on a tablet, and they're not actively thinking. Young children need to be active. So I have some quotes, and I'm going to link the resources on the next page. That technology and media are tools that are effective only when used appropriately. So there are appropriate ways to use technology and inappropriate ways to use technology. And another quote from the same reference says, effective uses of technology and media are active, hands-on, engaging, and empowering. They should not replace opportunities for real hands-on learning experiences. So the point is that well-designed educational programming can benefit young children's learning. But there are two problems with that. The first problem is that very little media is well-designed by educational or child development experts. Even programs that are thought to be effective, like Barney and cartoons, are actually harmful for young children's development. And a second benefit is that many of the benefits are only limited to rote skills and not general development like problem-solving skills. There are a number of harmful side effects when children use too much technology. One is poor physical development. We see higher rates of obesity in children who use a lot of technology. Children who use a lot of technology tend to have much less sleep, and sleep is very important for how young children learn. Children also tend to have poor gross and fine motor skills when they use too much technology. Young children who use a lot of technology also have poorer social skills. They have higher aggression and anger and less pro-social behavior and empathy. Research also shows that children who are exposed to a lot of media have poor cognitive development, which includes self-regulation and attention. And young children also have poor language skills. There's a myth amongst a lot of parents in Nigeria that putting children in front of a television is true. There's something about having that social relationship and that two-way conversation with children that they need, that triggers the brain to help them learn language. So we need to be informed about how we use technology. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? And we need to use technology strategically to avoid harming their social development. So here are some resources, and I'll put these resources up during the question and answer period again. I highly recommend that first resource by the Canadian Pediatric Society, Screen Time in Young Children. The last resource with the double asterisk, that's where I got the quote that I had on the previous page. And so now we'll go to the conclusion. Jeremiah 1:10 says, "Today I appoint you to stand up against nations and kingdoms. Some you must uproot and tear down, destroy and other overthrow. Others you must build up and plant." And I think that quote is very strategic for our time now. This time of COVID, let's use it to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow the harmful parts of our education that are not beneficial to children and not beneficial to society. Let's take what we have that's good and build it up and plant new things that will be even more effective. So the ultimate blessing of COVID-19 to early childhood education and education in general will be to uproot and destroy the educational practices that are harmful to children and society, and also to help us plant and build up the educational practices that are beneficial. I have a porch, a first-story porch, and I love to sit on that porch and watch the children as they pass by my house. Some of them will walk, some of them will dance, some of them will be running, others will be carrying water by. All of those children who walk by my house, they have such great hopes and dreams that sparkle in their eyes. So how can we, as a community of early childhood educators, empower these children to reach their full potential, to help them identify the gifts and abilities that God has blessed them with, help these children to reach their dreams and be salt and light in God's kingdom? I believe this is a calling that's worth investing our lives into, and may God grant us the wisdom, the skills, and the creativity to complete this calling. So thank you again for your time and attention, and we'll look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you so much, Katrina. Thank you for sharing with us and sharing your knowledge with us. We're very, very grateful. So we want to go in the time of Q&A. So if you have questions, please send them in the chat. I have one question so far, so please put your questions in the chat. And then you can also raise your way. So you can go ahead and do that. Katrina, do you want to talk about this page before I go into the poll?
Sure. So these are just some materials. I'm also chairperson of an NGO that we started last year called Early Years Nigeria Initiative. And so this is some of the contact information and resources that we've developed. On the left is a series of textbooks that I've written called Celebrating Young Children. And those are for early childhood educators that kind of give an overview of child development, of what children need to learn and how to teach them in a way that's effective. On the right, through Early Years Nigeria, we've developed some learning materials that are culturally relevant and with some playful activities. And then in the middle, we have contact details. We have some video demonstrations of playful activities for children, some ideas for learning activities, and more. So you can go to the Facebook page or to the YouTube page for some of those resources.
Great, thanks so much. So one of the things we're doing as ACSI Nigeria is we want to partner with Katrina to start a credential program for early childhood education. And this will be a 4-week program. But before we start the program, we'd really like to get your feedback in what that program would look like, and just in terms of the structure and the content and things like that. So some of you have already maybe done this. We did send out a survey around. So if you've already done the survey, you do not have to fill out the poll that I'm about to launch because it's the exact same questions. But if you have not done the survey, I'm going to launch a poll, and I would like you to just answer the questions on the poll between now and the end of the webinar. So you can do it now, you can do it at the end. I'll give some time at the end for that also. But also do note that question 8 and question 9, it's the same question, but with different topics. We couldn't get all the topics in one question, so I had to split it up into 2 questions. So it's the same question, but different topics. So make sure you do answer both 8 and 9. So I'm gonna go ahead and launch that. And then we can go ahead and get started with some questions. So you should see the poll on your screen. And you can go ahead and fill that out. So Katrina, let's see, the first question I have here is from Mark Wiersma, and he said, enriched play seems very important. That is very different from parents' expectations and desires for their little children. How might parents get acquainted with some of these more suitable activities so that they want their children to do them?
Well, thank you. I should have prompted you with that question because you're going to help me go back and talk about something that I skipped over due to time. The concept of enriched play, let's see if I can find it. So when we look about effective teaching strategies for early childhood education, let's see. Enriched play is one concept we can talk about. Let's see. Goodness, all these things keep popping up on my screen. Okay, so if we think about the idea of enriched play, enriched means to make richer by adding a desirable ingredient or nutrient. So you can think about Milo. I think Milo adds nutrients to the drink to make it healthier for children, to add nutrients that they might not otherwise get. So we can think about enriched play as making play richer or more effective for nurturing holistic development as the teacher or as the parent adds nutrients. And so those nutrients can be like the academic, the social skills to add to it. So there are two different ways that you can implement enriched play. One way is as children are playing, add, quote, nutrients to emphasize the language, reading, writing, maths, and science topics related to their play. And you can do that by asking questions or giving challenges. So just like the example that I gave, when the children were playing with dirt, you could give them challenges, write letters in the dirt, draw shapes in the dirt. Or you could ask the questions, what does the dirt feel like? What does it smell like? So that idea is that children are playing based on their own free choice. And then parents and teachers are adding nutrients. They're giving challenges, they're asking questions that integrate important academic, social, and cognitive skills that young children need to learn. A second enriched play strategy is to develop learning activities that are playful, that meet an academic learning objective. So if you want to teach children, let's say colors, and one thing you could do is have a playful game. You could get pieces of fabric that are different colors or pieces of paper that are different colors, and you could hide them around the room and say, oh yeah, find all the different colors, find every color in the rainbow. And so children are learning their colors, but they're also doing a playful activity that's fun. And so you're almost disguising the learning amongst the fun activity. So you're right, parents will need to be educated that play is not just play, but there are things, there are important things that our children are learning when they're doing play. And perhaps one way of doing that is to show them some of these playful activities that meet enriched play strategy too, learning activities that are inherently playful.
Great, thanks, Katrina. So I think this question is a bit similar. I don't know if you have anything you want to add, but it says, how do we handle parental expectations of pupils brought to our school? Sometimes they want so much beyond normal for the kids, and we're in a business on the other hand. How do you balance?
It is a balance. And, you know, I think the important thing here is just educating parents. You know, talking to them about education is the foundation, and it's not helpful for children to learn things at a young age, and even to teach them the difference between memorization and understanding. Again, when I was supervising teaching practice recently, there was a class of 4-year-old children, I think it was 3-year-old children, that as soon as the teaching practice teacher stopped, the head teacher came in and started saying, 2 times 1 is, and the children answered 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. And these are 3-year-old children. Do these children understand what 2 times 3 is? They're only repeating, they're memorizing. And so we together have to work together and educate parents about the importance of understanding in the early years, cognitive skills in the early years, and to help them know doesn't mean they'll be able to do it better down the road, but having that solid foundation of the skills that young children need to learn in the early years is better than rushing them to meet learning objectives at higher ages. And I think too, both parents and teachers sometimes have a very narrow view of what young children need to learn. So like in maths, young children need to learn how to count, do addition, subtraction, and identify their shapes. Well, math, there's so many more skills that young children need to learn in maths in the early years. And so helping parents to understand the broad range of what children need to understand instead of just the basic ones we think of.
Great. So here's another question about during the COVID-19 session, how can we achieve effective learning processes for the children while they're at home? So I don't know if you have some specific insight into what that might look like for ECE.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's another one that I skipped over that we'll go back to. So I'm not a technology expert, but some of the things that I've gleaned listening to other people who are, some wise uses of technology for young children. One is to create a video of yourself reading a book or telling a story. Oral language is one of the most important skills in the early years. And so the more that they can hear stories and other things, the better that they'll learn. And then give parents discussion questions. Say, okay, here's a storybook we read. Here are some questions you can discuss with your children to help continue developing their oral language skills and to learn other concepts as well. So offer to parents suggestions of discussion questions and follow-up activities. You can also send a video of songs with movements. Young children love to sing, and we can teach them songs that teach academic content as well. Every child knows if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. But we can change the words of those songs to teach academic skills or important health skills. So for example, instead of if you're happy and you know it, you can do a video of a song if you're healthy and you know it. And instead of clap your hands, it could be if you're healthy and you know it, eat a balanced diet. If you're healthy and you know it, get some exercise. If you're healthy and you know it and you really want to show it, if you're healthy and you know it, get good sleep. So you can take the songs and adjust them to include good academic skills that they need to learn as well. So songs can teach academic content. You can also, if your class is familiar with circle time, you can do circle time via Zoom. Again, social relationships are so important in the early years, and circle time is a good way to develop social skills. And so if your children have access to good, strong internet and you are able to do Zoom meetings, try doing circle time where you pose a question and every child answers. Or, children talk about what are their experiences during the pandemic. This promotes both language and social development. You can also do video mini lessons and then end with guidance for hands-on assignments using materials found at home. So for example, you might do a video mini lesson, just like about 5 or 10 minutes, about living things and non-living things. And then give them a hands-on assignment that they can do later. So get 2 trays, label one living things and label another one non-living things. And then go around, what do you see that's living and non-living? Put the non-living things on the tray. And the living things might not be able to stay on the tray because some of them might move, but draw pictures of what you see that's living and put it on the living tray. So you're giving a video of an academic concept and then give them guidance for something they can do using the materials that they have in their home to underscore that point. Another thing you can do is give children a project or a play activity and then have the children send pictures of their completed project. So for example, if they have the living tray and the non-living tray, they can take pictures. What did you find that was non-living? What did you find that was living? And then you can share the pictures with the classmates as a way to illustrate things that they've learned.
Okay, great. So another question we have is, speaking of children learning better in a good environment and with the right method, this can't happen if the teacher isn't motivated or in a good mood. So what should the school do in making teachers happy and motivated to help the children learn better?
I think I'd also turn that around and say, when teachers are teaching correctly, they themselves are filled with joy. So yes, teachers do need to make sure, or sorry, schools do need to make sure that teachers are able to provide for their family needs and have the supports that help them to live a holistic life, both in the classroom and out of the classroom. But teaching young children is so much fun. To see the joy and the delight in their faces, to be able to play games with children, like building things with blocks, like going around the classroom. What can we find that is living in the classroom? Those are fun things. So when teachers use good methods for teaching young children, I think that would increase the joy and fulfillment that they have within themselves. So I think it's a little bit of both. You know, schools need to make sure that teachers are well compensated so that they can meet their family needs and they're not constantly discouraged by that. But unplayful methods, that's going to increase the joy and fulfillment and satisfaction that teachers have in life in general.
Great. So here's another, we have lots of good questions here, so hopefully we have enough time. Someone asked, since the use of technology in learning seem to have more adverse effects, are you suggesting that online learning for children from primary to secondary levels should be mixed with other activities that will involve the use of worksheets?
I would replace worksheets with hands-on activities for young children. So is online learning the only thing that should be done? And I would say, hands down, no. There should be much more than online learning, particularly for young children. But worksheets aren't always good for young children's learning. Hands-on activities, you know, when your mom comes home from market, count. What types of produce did she bring home? How many tomatoes did she bring? How many pepe did she bring? How many yams did she bring? So doing hands-on activities with materials that children have available in their homes, that's much better than worksheets of just copying different numbers.
Okay, great. So another question we have here is, what should replace examinations? How do we identify what environment is compatible for a child's learning?
Okay, so those are two different questions?
From the same person, yep.
Okay, can you repeat the second one for me?
How do we identify what environment is compatible for a child's learning?
Okay. Okay, how do we replace, what should we replace exams with? You know, that would depend upon the content of what's being taught. You know, I think English and maths would be two different things. And it also depends upon the level of the child. I'm not saying that we should completely discard exams. I'm just saying let's minimize their importance. So for example, instead of exams being 60% of the grade, maybe one exam should only be 30%. And then we should give them assessments that are much more practical. I think these are often called authentic assessments. So, you know, in English language, if we're trying to measure children's writing ability, they should write a story, they should write a letter, they should write informational pamphlet about something they're learning about. So something that's authentic for what they're learning. You know, they could do a project. In science class, children don't necessarily have to write an exam, just like this last step here. They could have a project they have to complete, and then they take a picture of their completed project. I think in the early years, what's more important are the social skills, the physical skills, and the character skills. And a lot of those can be assessed by teacher observation. And, just saying, your child is above average in social skills, they're average, they're below average. That can be enough assessment, because the point of assessment is to communicate strengths and weaknesses to parents, and it's to guide instruction. And if children do a project well, that's all we need to know. They're doing well. We don't necessarily need to give them, they're number one in the class, they're number two in the class. That also has problems in and of themselves. So then how do we identify an environment that's compatible with children's learning? The best thing to do is learn more about child development. How do children learn? And then think about, what do children need to learn? In maths, what do they need to learn? In reading, what do they need to learn? And then we can match teaching methods to the content and to child development, what we know about how young children learn. So it's not something that can be done very quickly. It's something that takes time, it takes study, and perhaps participation in the 4-week early childhood education credential course.
Yes. All right, so another question we have here is, what subjects would you suggest should be done online, and which ones should be done offline?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think with the current state of things right now, if the new term is like the old term, where children won't be able to come to schools at all, I think probably every subject will need a little bit of both. A little bit of online learning and then a little bit of hands-on activities. So for example, in English, you might tell a story, and maybe why the sun and the moon live in the sky. And then after you tell the story, give them follow-up activities to do. Draw a picture of the story. What did you, when you heard the story, draw a picture. Tell the story to one of your brothers and sisters, and what did you talk about in the story? So add other things they can do, hands-on activities based on what you do through a video or what you do through WhatsApp or other online options. So I think every subject will probably need a little bit of both.
Great. And I think you've touched on this a little bit, but we can maybe, I don't know if you have anything to add, but how do we, how do we make learning joyful and engaging now that we don't have physical classrooms?
That's a good question. That probably will depend a lot on the family. And so you probably will need to do education for the families, because I know many parents have the stereotype that learning should be silent and independent and joyless. So, if you tell parents, like, these are activities that should be fun for children, they should enjoy it, they should laugh, they should work together. So educate parents about the joy of it. But then, there are a lot of games that children can play that teach academic skills. So demonstrate some of those games through a video, or give explanations through WhatsApp, and then allow children to play some of the games. And you'll probably have to include an element of education, that yes, this is a game, but see what children are learning through the game.
Great. And then let's see. There's one other question. A few parents still insist on their children's performance position in class. How do we handle them?
As an academic and not as a professional, I would say educate them about, the importance of social skills and collaboration and working together, about how important it is in the workplace for children in the future to have good cooperative social skills. And that when you rank order children, you're setting them up for competition, which is the opposite of cooperation. And so, just once you take your stance, take your stance. And it might drive some parents away, but it might bring some parents in. When you say the purpose of this school is to teach cooperation, we're teaching good social skills, we're teaching them how to be team players. And I think many parents would be reasonable and would accept that. And just because you don't do it in the early years doesn't mean you don't have to do it in future years. Just, explain to them, because of the importance in the early years of these skills, we're not going to rank order them in the early years, but maybe in subsequent grades you might. That might be one option.
Great. So then we'll stop here. The last question, someone's asking if you can share some other useful websites that can help with online content and activities. I don't know if you have any practical ideas in terms of that.
Yeah, they're actually, one of my favorite websites is prekinders.com. I think, let me make sure I get the website correct. And there are a lot of what I call mommy blogs. I'm not sure if that's what it is, but at least in the West, there is a whole cultural movement of homeschooling and of moms who keep their children home and school them and post blogs on the learning activities that they do. And so not all of them could easily be done in Nigeria, but a lot of them could be adapted for Nigeria. And so, if you just, yeah, okay, here's the website. I don't know if you can see it. It's prekinders.com. Is that coming up on your screen? Yeah. Can you see it? Okay. That's one. Okay, here, I'll put it in a PowerPoint. And then another one that I love is Gift of Curiosity. So if you just Google Gift of Curiosity, that's another one that's very science-based, but she has a lot of really good activities. But if you just do like hands-on science kindergarten or hands-on science preschool, all of these mommy blogs will pop up and you'll find so many different activities that can be hands-on activities done with children.
Great, thanks, Katrina. So I will actually post those links in the chat also if anybody wants to click on it in that way. And Katrina also has it up on her slides. And I will share, somebody was asking about the YouTube channel. So I'm just posting the link now to the ACSI Nigeria YouTube channel. So you will see by tomorrow evening, hopefully, you'll see the recording of this particular webinar on our YouTube channel. So you can go there if you want to rewatch it or if you missed something. Then I'll also share, Katrina shared earlier on her slide about the Early Years Initiative, and they have quite a few videos on there also with some teaching tools. So I am also sharing the link to that YouTube channel. So you'll see that in the chat. And then here is the link to Pre-Kinders, and also the link to the Gift of Curiosity in the chat.
And we can one other website, prek.com. I've also found very helpful.
Okay, let me check that out too. All right. Yeah, so Katrina's back on her page that had her resources. So you can either contact her through Facebook, through the WhatsApp number is also there. Somebody is asking about having the details to the resources. So you can check that out. WhatsApp, Facebook, YouTube. There's also an email there, so you can contact her in any of those ways. Here's the prek.com website. So I've put that also in the chat. So we can also link to those in the YouTube description so that people can access those links there also. So I think, Katrina, we can round up because it's already 4:30. So we want to just thank you, and we really appreciate all the knowledge and the experiences that you've shared with us. We're very, very grateful, and I think we've all been blessed through this webinar. So if you can stop sharing your screen, I will go ahead and share my screen just to talk about the professional credential a little bit before we round up. So again, we mentioned this earlier in the presentation, but ACSI Nigeria is planning to partner with Katrina in doing a 4-week professional credential in early childhood education. And that's why you are filling out the poll, so we can get feedback from you on how well we might be able to run a program like this. And so a lot of the details are on hold because of COVID, and we don't really know when school will resume and all of those kind of things yet. So we will be communicating to those things to you as we are able to make decisions and as we are able to plan. But I want to just turn it over to Katrina to just give us a little bit of an overview of the content of this credential program that we're looking at.
Okay. So the content will look a lot at the different methods of teaching in early childhood. It'll start off with, child development and how young children learn, how God created them to learn. Then it will also look at teaching methods and teaching materials for teaching. And, different teaching methods are appropriate for different subjects. So they'll be taken largely in teaching English. What methods do you use in English? What materials should you use? Teaching maths, what materials should you use? What methods should you use? So kind of looking at a holistic view of development in the early years and how do we nurture it in the early childhood classroom. And we'll also look at holistic development as well. So not just the academic subjects, but also how do you teach social skills, how do you teach character, and nurture physical development as well. So we're hoping it will be very hands-on with lots of practical ideas. And not just theory. The theory is important, but the practical will be more important as well.
Great, thank you so much, Katrina. So again, as we know more, we'll communicate those details to you. We're really hoping and praying that we could at least get the in-person part of this training rolled out early next year. So by January, February, if God willing, COVID kind of settles down, we'd like to start it then. But if we end up doing a hybrid package, like one of the questions asked in the poll, then we'd like to be able to release some of the online portions a bit earlier and then start the in-person then when we're able to gather together again in person. So look forward to communications regarding that program. Then the next thing, our next webinar will be on Tuesday, August 4th at 3 p.m. And again, you can use the same link that you used to join us today to join that webinar. And we're going to do a student panel discussion. And we are having 4 SS students, so secondary school students, join us, and they're just going to share their experiences and their perspectives on what it's been like learning from home. So I think this will be beneficial for all of us, teachers, school administrators, parents, just to get some idea of how well our students are adapting to this learning from home process and how we can continue to encourage them in this and engage with them in this process. So that will be our next webinar on Tuesday, August 4th. So again, we want to thank you so much for coming. The recording will be up on YouTube hopefully tomorrow, so feel free to check that out. If you've not finished the poll, go ahead and do that. I will leave the meeting up for a few more minutes so people can do that before they sign off. So again, thank you, Katrina, for sharing with us. We're very, very blessed, and God bless you all. And somebody asked, so I'll say this as some of you are signing off already, but somebody is asking how much are we to pay for this? And we haven't concluded on the cost yet of the program because it depends on location, it depends on how much of it we'll do online and how much of it we'll do in person. And so once we get those details out, we'll communicate that to you. So again, thank you everybody for attending. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time.